The silver research vessel hung in orbit above planet RC 982, its sleek hull reflecting the light of 3 moons. Inside, Ada stood before the ship's council, her purple eyes fixed on the head researcher. She was young for a luminary scientist, barely 50 cycles old, but her skills had earned her a place on this mission. "The readings from the surface are strange," she reported, her translucent skin glowing softly with excitement. "The life forms show far more complex neural patterns than our initial scan suggested." The head researcher, tall and elegant like all luminary, looked down at her with mild interest. "Very well. You may leave the ground team. Remember, we are here to observe only. Our superior technology allows us to study without interfering." Ada nodded, containing her joy. This was her first time leading a research team. As the youngest member of the expedition, she had worked twice as hard to prove herself worthy of her position. The descent to the planet's surface was smooth. Their gravity pods touched down in a small clearing surrounded by towering trees with blue-green leaves. The air was thick and humid, filled with strange sounds from unseen creatures. "Life signs are strongest in that direction." Ada pointed toward a dense patch of vegetation. The other 3 members of her team activated their protective fields and followed her. Their white environmental suits gleamed in the planet's dim light. They'd walked for an hour, collecting samples and data. Ada noticed that the animal sounds had gradually stopped, but she was too focused on her readings to worry. The silence should have been their first warning. The attack came without warning. A massive shape burst from the undergrowth, all teeth, claws, and armored scales. It was 3 times larger than anything their scans had detected. The creature's roar shook the ground, and its tail swept through the air like a whip. "Defensive positions," Ada shouted, reaching for her energy shield. But when she turned, she saw her team already running back toward the ships. They had abandoned their equipment, abandoned their posts, abandoned her. "Wait," she called after them. "We have protocols." The beast lunged. Ada rolled away, her heart pounding. Her personal shield flickered as the creature's claws scraped against it. She scrambled behind a thick tree, trying to activate her emergency beacon. The device sparked and died, damaged in her fall. Through the trees, she saw her team's gravity pods lifting off. They hadn't even tried to help her. They were leaving her behind. "No," she whispered. "Please, no." The creature struck again. Ada ran, her legs burning with effort. Her people were supposed to be advanced, civilized. They were supposed to be better than this. The ship's lights grew smaller in the darkening sky until they vanished completely. Night fell quickly on RC 982. Ada huddled in a small cave, her environmental suit's power slowly draining. She had managed to lose the creature, but she could hear other things moving in the darkness. Strange calls echoed through the trees, and eyes gleamed in the shadows. Her training felt useless now. All her life, she had been taught that the luminary were superior to other species because they had moved beyond base emotions like fear and attachment. They made decisions based on pure logic and reason. But there had been nothing logical about abandoning a team member to die. Ada checked her suit's systems. The defensive shield was functioning but weak. Her communications were dead. The atmospheric processor would keep her breathing for maybe a month. After that, she pulled up the planet's data on her cracked datapad. RC 982 was designated as a death world, a planet too dangerous for normal research. That's why they had chosen a small team, why they had brought their best shields, and why, she realized with growing anger, no one would come back for her. A howl echoed through the night, closer this time. Ada clutched her only weapon, a small energy cutter meant for taking samples. In the darkness of an alien world, surrounded by monsters, she made herself a promise. She would survive. She would find a way off this planet. And she would never again believe that emotional detachment made anyone superior. In the distance, something massive moved through the trees, heading her way. Ada gripped her cutter tighter and prepared herself for a long night. It was just the first of many she would have to survive. 10 days had passed since Ada's abandonment on RC 982. She sat in her improved shelter, a cave sealed with fallen trees and vines, recording observations on her damaged datapad. Her once pristine white suit was now stained with mud and plant juice, used as camouflage against predators. Day 10 of survival, she spoke softly. I was wrong about everything. These creatures, they're not just monsters. A sound outside made her pause. Through a gap in her barricade, she watched a pack of what she had named bladebacks, four-legged creatures with sharp plates along their spines. In her first days, she had feared them. Now she knew better. The largest bladeback was limping. Without hesitation, two others moved to support it, letting it lean against them. A fourth stood guard while a fifth brought over some kind of fruit. They worked together, protected each other. Like a family, Ada whispered, making notes. Her people would have left the injured one behind, just as they had left her. A distant roar shook the ground. The bladebacks instantly formed a defensive circle. Ada recognized that roar. It belonged to the same type of creature that had attacked her on the first day. She had started calling them titans after seeing one knock down a tree, just to reach some high-growing fruit. The bladebacks moved as one, disappearing into the thick forest. They didn't run in panic like her team had. They retreated in organized waves, making sure each member was protected. Ada checked her suit's power level. 64% remaining. She had learned to recharge it by lying in the sunlight during safe hours. Another thing her superior people had never thought to try. They relied too much on their ships and stations. Movement caught her eye. A smaller creature, one she hadn't seen before, was climbing down a tree. It looked almost like a mix between a bird and a lizard, with bright feathers and small clawed hands. As she watched, it began collecting shiny stones and arranging them in a pattern. It's making art, Ada realized with shock. She had seen similar behavior 3 days ago, when a different species had arranged colorful leaves in spiral patterns. These monsters had culture. A shadow passed overhead. Ada looked up through the trees to see one of the flying predators she called wind knights. Their wings spanned wider than her cave entrance, and their sharp beaks could crack open tough tree bark. But she had seen them sharing food with others of their kind, even with different species. The small creature quickly hid its stone collection and scurried away. The wind knight landed, but instead of hunting, it began to clean its wings. Ada noticed something new. It had pieces of shiny metal stuck to its feathers, similar to how she had seen others decorate their nests. They're not just surviving, she wrote in her notes. They're living, creating, thinking. A distant crack made both Ada and the wind knight freeze. Something big was moving through the forest. The wind knight took off, its powerful wings stirring up leaves. Ada retreated deeper into her cave, grateful for her camouflage. Through her entrance gap, she saw a titan emerge from the trees. It moved with purpose, not just hunting. In its clawed hands, it carried branches. As Ada watched, it began to weave them into an existing structure, a massive nest hidden among the larger trees. Tool use, she whispered, recording frantically. Problem solving. Construction skills. The titan finished its work and let out a softer rumble. 2 smaller titans emerged from the nest, rubbing against the large one's legs. It was protecting its young, teaching them. Ada looked at her dwindling supplies. Her people had taught her that less advanced life forms were meant to be studied from a distance, that they were simple creatures driven by basic instincts. But everything she had seen here proved that wrong. These beings had families, showed kindness, created beauty, and passed on knowledge. They weren't monsters at all. Her people, with their cold logic and easy betrayal, were far more monstrous. Night was falling again. Ada secured her shelter, listening to the complex songs and calls of the forest's inhabitants. She was no longer just observing them. She was learning from them. And maybe, just maybe, that would help her survive long enough to be rescued. Ada woke to an unfamiliar sound cutting through the morning air. It wasn't the deep roar of a titan or the screech of a wind knight. This sound was mechanical, the hum of engines. Her heart raced as she peered through her cave's hidden entrance. A ship was descending through the thick atmosphere, but it wasn't the sleek silver of luminary design. This vessel was bulky, practical, with visible armor plating and large thrusters. She had never seen anything like it. The ship landed in a clearing about half a mile from her shelter. Ada watched through her cracked datapad's zoom function as a hatch opened. 5 figures emerged, wearing heavy environmental suits that looked more like armor. They moved with confidence but stayed close together, weapons ready. Unknown species detected, she whispered into her recorder. They appear to be Bictal, similar in size to Luminari, but more heavily built. Their technology seems primitive by our standards, yet clearly effective. Ada crept closer, using the camouflage techniques she had learned from watching the bladebacks. The strangers were setting up equipment, talking to each other through their suits' communication systems. Their language was unlike anything in her database. One of them removed their helmet, revealing a face that made Ada gasp. The being looked almost luminary-like, but with darker skin and none of the characteristic glow. Its features were stronger, more defined, and it had a covering of short hair on its head. "Careful, Jack," one of the suited figures said in a rough, friendly voice. "Atmosphere reads safe, but you know the protocols." "All clear, Doc," the one called Jack replied, grinning. "Besides, someone's got to test it. Might as well be the commander." Ada was shocked. A leader taking the first risk. Luminary leaders always sent others to test dangerous situations. She moved closer, fascinated. The strangers worked efficiently, setting up a perimeter of devices that seemed to be sensors. But unlike luminary technology, which tried to hide itself, these devices were obvious, almost like they were warning the local wildlife. "Movement at 2 o'clock, one of them called out. A titan emerged from the trees, drawn by the activity. Ada held her breath. She had seen titans tear through trees like paper. These strangers wouldn't stand a chance with their primitive technology, but they didn't run. "Hold position," Jack ordered calmly. "Doc, what do you see?" The one called Doc was pointing a scanner at the titan. "Fascinating. Neural activity suggests high intelligence. Look at how it's analyzing us." The titan roared, but instead of panicking, the strangers held their ground. Jack stepped forward, holding up empty hands while his team covered him with their weapons. "Easy there, big guy," he said in a soothing tone. "We're just visiting." To Ada's amazement, the titan stopped. It seemed confused by their behavior. Not running, not attacking, just standing their ground. After a tense moment, it turned and walked away. "Well," Jack grinned, "that's one way to meet the locals. Everyone okay?" They all nodded, then went right back to work. Ada couldn't believe it. They had faced down one of the most dangerous creatures on the planet, and they were acting like it was normal. "Log update," she whispered into her recorder. "These beings show remarkable courage, yet it's not the foolish bravery of ignorance. They're cautious, prepared, but not ruled by fear. Their technology may be less advanced, but their behavior suggests a deeper understanding of how to interact with dangerous life forms." As she watched, they set up more equipment, took samples, and even treated a small injured flying creature they found. Their care with the tiny being was surprising. Luminary would have seen it as too insignificant to bother with. "They're called humans," she overheard Doc saying while treating the creature. "From Earth, we specialize in exploring dangerous worlds like this one." Ada felt hope for the first time since being abandoned. These humans were different from her people. They were stronger in ways that had nothing to do with technology. She needed to make contact with them. But first, she had to be sure they were as different from the Luminari as they seemed. She would watch them a bit longer, learn more about them. After all, She had learned the hard way that appearances could be deceiving. The attack came at dusk. Ada had been watching the human camp for 2 days, impressed by their methodical work and careful interactions with the wildlife. But now, everything was about to go wrong. Through the growing darkness, she saw them, a pack of titans, more than she had ever seen together. 6 massive shapes moving with purpose toward the human camp. This wasn't a random encounter. The titans were hunting. The humans had good defenses, energy barriers, and weapons, but Ada had seen titans break through stronger luminary shields. She clutched her damaged datapad, torn between staying hidden and warning them. Movement, one of the humans shouted. Multiple large signatures incoming. Commander Jack's voice cut through the chaos. Battle stations. Doc, get the samples secured. Mary, power up the shield grid. Tom and Raj, heavy weapons online. The humans moved with practiced speed, but Ada could see they didn't understand the true danger. Their backs were turned to the 2 titans circling around behind them, a hunting strategy she had documented in her observations. Making her decision, Ada activated her suit's remaining power. The glowing patterns on her skin would make her visible, but she had to try. Behind you, she shouted, running from her hiding place. They hunt in circles. The humans spun at her voice. Jack reacted instantly, redirecting his team to cover all angles. The titans attacked at that moment, massive claws scraping against the energy barriers. Unknown friendly at 6 o'clock, Jack shouted. Cover her approach. Ada sprinted toward their perimeter, her heart pounding. A titan lunged for her, but human weapons fire drove it back. The noise was incredible, roaring beasts, humming energy weapons, and shouted commands. Barrier at 40%. Mary called out. We can't take much more of this. Ada reached their lines. To her surprise, Tom immediately moved to shield her with his armored suit. These humans were protecting her without hesitation, even though she was clearly alien. Those energy pulses aren't strong enough, she said quickly. Hit them where the neck plates meet. There's a weak point. Jack didn't hesitate. You heard her. Concentrate fire on the neck joints. The humans adjusted their aim. 2 titans fell back, roaring in pain. But the largest one broke through the barrier, its claws leaving deep gouges in the ground. Fall back to the ship, Jack ordered, but instead of running, the humans moved as a unit, covering each other's retreat. No one was left behind. Ada's suit power was almost gone. A titan's tail swept toward her, but Raj pulled her out of the way, taking the hit on his armored shoulder. Thank you, she gasped. Don't mention it, he grunted, still firing his weapon. They reached the ship's ramp. The titans charged again, but the combined fire from the humans finally drove them back. The largest one bellowed in frustration, then led its pack back into the forest. Inside the ship, Ada found herself surrounded by curious but friendly faces. No one pointed weapons at her. No one demanded explanations. Instead, Doc was scanning her for injuries while Mary offered her water. That was some warning you gave us, Jack said, removing his helmet. You saved our lives. I'm Commander Jack of the Earth Exploration Force. And you are? I am Ada, she replied, her translator working to convert her words. I was abandoned here by my people, the Luminary. She expected disbelief or suspicion. Instead, she saw anger and sympathy in their faces. They left you here? Tom asked, clearly upset. On a death world. We'll need to hear the full story, Jack said firmly. But first, Doc, make sure she's okay. Mary, get her whatever supplies she needs. She's under our protection now. Ada felt something wet on her face. Reaching up, she realized she was crying. Something Luminary weren't supposed to do. But these humans didn't seem to mind. If anything, their expressions grew softer. Welcome aboard, Ada, Jack smiled. You're safe now. And I promise you this, we don't leave people behind. Not ever. For the first time in weeks, Ada felt truly safe. These primitive humans had shown more civilization in a few minutes than her people had in centuries. She had found something she never expected on this dangerous world: hope. The human ship Pioneer felt different from any vessel Ada had ever known. While luminary ships were all smooth surfaces and quiet efficiency, this one hummed with life. The walls were covered with personal items, photographs, drawings, and what they called mission patches. Ada sat in what they called the mess hall, surrounded by the human crew. Her translator was working better after Doc had helped repair it with their primitive but effective technology. "So your people really just left you there?" Mary asked, passing Ada a cup of something hot they called coffee. "Because of one Titan attack." Ada nodded, taking a careful sip. The bitter drink was strange but pleasant. The luminary believe in logical decisions above all else. Risking multiple lives to save one is considered inefficient. "That's not logic," Tom said firmly. "That's just being cold." Jack, who had been listening quietly, leaned forward. "Tell me, Ada, what did you learn about the creatures on RC-982 during your time there?" Ada activated her datapad, now working better after human repairs. "Everything we thought we knew was wrong. Those beings we called monsters. They create art. They care for their young. They work together. They're intelligent. Just like the creatures on Earth," Doc smiled. "You know, humans evolved alongside predators too. Lions, bears, wolves. They helped shape who we are." This was new to Ada. "But your technology came much later," Jack explained. "For most of our history, we were the ones trying not to get eaten. We learned to survive by working together, by understanding the predators, by caring for each other." The humans showed her their historical records. Ada watched in fascination as images played on the screen. Early humans with simple spears standing against massive creatures, tribes working together to survive, people risking their lives to save others. "Your emotions," Ada said slowly, "we were taught they made you weak. But they're actually your strength, aren't they? Emotions give us reason to fight, to explore, to save others," Mary explained. "Fear keeps us careful. Love keeps us together. Curiosity drives us forward." Tom brought up more images: human cities, ships, art, and music. "We didn't advance by becoming cold. We advanced by working together, by caring about each other." Ada thought about the bladebacks supporting their injured member, the Titans teaching their young. Just like the creatures on RC-982, they survive through cooperation, through feeling. "Exactly," Doc said excitedly. "That's why we study them with respect. Every world, every species has something to teach us." A small alarm beeped, and Jack checked his device. "Speaking of learning, Ada, would you like to help us understand more about the planet's creatures? Your observations are incredible." Ada felt warmth spread through her chest. Pride, she realized. Another emotion her people try to suppress. "I would like that very much." Over the next few hours, she shared her notes about the Titans' hunting patterns, the Bladeback's social structure, the Wind Knight's decorative habits. The humans listened intently, asking questions, offering comparisons to Earth creatures. "You know," Mary said later, as they watched the planet's 3 moons through the observation window, "your people might be more technologically advanced, but they've lost something important along the way." Ada touched the window's cool surface. "They forgot that true advancement isn't just about technology. It's about growing better, not just stronger." "Progress without compassion isn't really progress at all," Jack agreed. "The mind needs the heart to guide it." Looking at her reflection in the window, Ada noticed she was smiling. Really smiling, not the small controlled expressions Luminary allowed. Her skin was glowing brighter, responding to her emotions instead of suppressing them. "Maybe," she said softly, "I needed to be abandoned among monsters to find what my people lost, to find what it really means to be civilized." The humans nodded in understanding. They didn't try to hide their emotions, their sympathy, their acceptance, their friendship were clear on their faces. Ada had lost her home among the stars. But here, surrounded by these emotional, caring, supposedly primitive humans, she was finding something better. She was finding truth. The warning alarms on the Pioneer blared to life. Ada was helping Doc catalog wildlife data when the ship's systems detected an approaching vessel. Her heart sank as she recognized the sleek silver shape on the screen. "Luminary ship," she whispered. "They found us." Jack rushed to the bridge, his crew taking battle stations without being told. The human ship might have looked primitive, but Ada had learned that appearances were deceiving. Hidden weapon systems powered up, and shields hummed to life. "Incoming transmission," Mary reported from her station. A familiar face appeared on the main screen. The head researcher who had abandoned Ada. His luminescent skin glowed with a faint blue pattern that indicated displeasure. "Primitive vessel," he said coldly, "you have taken one of our citizens. Return the luminary female immediately, or face the consequences of interfering with a superior species." Ada felt anger rise in her chest, an emotion she no longer tried to suppress. Before Jack could respond, she stepped forward. "Superior," she said, her voice strong. "You abandoned one of your own on a death world. These humans saved me while you ran away." The head researcher's glow patterns shifted to show shock at her emotional display. "You have been contaminated by these creatures. Your emotional outburst proves it. Return to us, and we will purge these primitive influences." "Sir," Tom called out from his station, "3 more luminary ships just dropped out of faster-than-light travel. They're taking up attack positions." Jack stood calm, a slight smile on his face. "Interesting. They think they're surrounding us." He pressed a button on his chair. "All ships, Protocol 7. Ada's eyes widened as space seemed to shimmer around them. 12 human vessels decloaked, their powerful forms dwarfing the luminary ships. They had been there the whole time, invisible to even luminary sensors. "Perhaps," Jack said to the stunned head researcher, "we should discuss this situation more diplomatically. You see, humans have a saying, 'Don't judge a book by its cover.'" The luminary leader's face showed confusion. "This is impossible. Your species is barely capable of spaceflight. Our data shows." "Your data," Ada interrupted, "is as flawed as your philosophy. While you were busy believing yourselves superior, humans spread across hundreds of worlds. They advanced through cooperation, not conquest. Through understanding, not arrogance." "Lady Ada speaks truth," Jack added. "We've been watching your people for years. We saw how you treat other species, how you abandon your own. We were hoping you would learn and grow on your own, but this situation requires direct intervention." The luminary ships tried to power up their weapons, but nothing happened. Mary smiled at her console. "Our dampening field is holding, Commander. Their systems are locked down." "Listen carefully," Jack told the head researcher. "Humanity doesn't want war. We want peaceful cooperation between species. But we will not allow you to continue abandoning people on death worlds or treating other species as inferior." Ada stepped forward again. "Your choice is simple. Either learn to work with other species as equals, or find yourselves isolated from galactic society. Humans have treaties with 50 other species, species you don't even know exist because you were too busy looking down on everyone." The head researcher's glow patterns showed confusion and fear. "But our technology means nothing without compassion," Ada finished. "I learned that from the monsters you left me with, and from the humans you looked down upon." After a long moment, the head researcher's patterns shifted to a dim white. "Submission. Perhaps we have much to learn." "Yes," Jack smiled. "You do. And we're willing to teach you, if you're willing to learn. Starting with an official apology to Ada and a change in your policies about abandoned crew members." Ada watched as her former people faced their first lesson in humility. The human ships could have destroyed them easily, but instead offered help and guidance. It was the perfect example of true civilization. power tempered by wisdom and compassion. The luminary would learn, as she had, that the universe had much to teach them, and their teachers would be the very beings they had once dismissed as primitive. 1 year had passed since the confrontation between the luminary and human ships. Ada stood at a large window on the Earth's Central Space Station, watching ships from dozens of species dock and depart. Her skin glowed with the warm colors of contentment. She no longer tried to control her natural luminescence. "Ambassador Ada," a voice called from behind her. She turned to see Jack, now wearing the formal uniform of an Earth Fleet commander. "Your next meeting is about to start." She smiled at her old friend. "The luminary delegation again." "Actually, it's the Bladebacks," Jack grinned, though they prefer their proper name, the Sirathi. "Your work helped us establish first contact with them." This was Ada's new life, serving as a bridge between species. After the incident, many younger luminary had come forward, admitting they too felt trapped by their society's cold logic. She had become their voice and a symbol of change. "Did you see the latest reports from RC 982? She asked as they walked through the station's corridors. Humans and aliens of all kinds nodded respectfully as they passed. "The research station is doing well," Jack confirmed. "Amazing how much easier it is to study the wildlife when we work with them instead of hiding from them." They entered the meeting room where representatives from various species waited. Among them was the head researcher who had once abandoned Ada. He had changed too, his glow patterns showing humility instead of arrogance. "The Sirathi have an interesting proposal," Ada addressed the gathering. "They want to establish a joint training program. Their understanding of predator behavior combined with human courage and luminary technology could revolutionize how we explore dangerous worlds." "Together we are stronger," the head researcher said, using the human phrase carefully. It was still strange to hear luminary speak with such openness about cooperation. The meeting proceeded, with each species contributing their unique perspectives. Ada watched with pride as her people engaged in real dialogue, asking questions instead of making assumptions. Later, in the station's garden area, Mary found Ada looking at old photos from the Pioneer. "Missing the adventure?" she asked. "Remembering where it started," Ada replied. "I had to be abandoned among monsters to find out who the real monsters were and who the real heroes are." "You found your humanity among the beasts," Mary laughed. "There's probably a lesson in that." Ada's datapad chimed, a message from Earth's universities. More luminary youth were requesting to study alongside humans, to learn about emotions and cooperation. The old guard was fading, replaced by a new generation who saw strength in diversity. "You know what the funny thing is," Ada said, looking at the stars through the garden's dome. "My people thought they were superior because they suppressed their emotions. But look at humans. You feel everything deeply, yet you've achieved so much. You cry, laugh, love, fear, and keep going anyway." "That's because there's no real strength in being cold," Tom said, joining them. "Real strength is being scared, but still doing what's right. Being hurt, but still helping others. Being uncertain, but still moving forward." A group of luminary children ran past them, playing with human and Sirathi young. Their skin patterns flickered with joy and excitement. No one was telling them to suppress their feelings anymore. "The monsters on RC 982 taught me about family and cooperation," Ada reflected. "Humans taught me about courage and compassion. And now my people are finally learning that true civilization isn't about having the best technology or the most logical society. It's about having the biggest heart," Jack finished, walking up to join them. "Even if that heart is sometimes scared, or sad, or unsure." Ada's skin glowed with all the colors of happiness as she watched her two worlds merge and grow. The luminary were changing, becoming warmer, more alive. Humans were sharing their strength and wisdom with the galaxy. And somewhere on RC 982, creatures that everyone had once called monsters were being understood and respected at last. "So," Jack said with a familiar gleam in his eye, ready for your next mission. We've found another death world that needs exploring." Ada smiled, feeling the perfect blend of excitement and fear, emotions she now embraced. "Always ready, Commander. After all, there are no real monsters out there. Only new friends we haven't understood yet." And in that moment, surrounded by the species she had come to love, Ada knew she had found something far greater than the cold perfection her people had sought. She had found the warm, messy, wonderful truth about what it meant to be truly civilized.